and you don't feel comfortable with it, then just having an exit strategy, because there are times where I just need to bail. Like I didn't want to
Really?
continue the conversation. There's one video that I did called "When Not to Do SE,"
Okay.
and it basically involved uh, a mother that just well, not just, she lost her child, and during the funeral, she felt that Jesus um, reached out to her and said, "I know, the suffering that you're going through. I've lost a son too." And that's what helped her kind of continue with her, with her life. And I directly asked her, like, if this experience didn't happen, what would be like, what would happen? And she said, I probably wouldn't have a reason to live. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
exit, because you definitely don't want to do any harm to someone who's relying on a belief, even if it's not on solid footing. Or you don't want someone to examine a belief, whether it's true or not, if they need it to get up every day in the morning. You just don't want to do that.
What do you think about that conversation? I'm sure you listened to it. I guess it's a debate, but Matt had with someone recently on the Modern Debate channel. And the guy said that if he wasn't a Christian, he would be killing people.
Yeah, I watched that debate.
He's got to be like a huckster. I don't know. I have a
um,
hard time believing him.
I don't know. I believed him.
Oh no,
Um,
I believe. Okay, let me rephrase that. He seems like, just based on his personality, he seems like someone that is. I believe him that he might be hurting people, but I believe him that he's doing that because I think he seems like just genuinely a bad person. Honestly,
yeah,
I don't mean to be rude, but honestly, his personality seemed like a sociopath to me. Like yeah. So,
yeah. And I think he actually used that language. He considered himself a sociopath, and he's been tested, and he's a sociopath. And
oh really?
his his
I didn't catch that, but yeah.
his case was that uh, this must be true, because, or this is a better moral system, because look what it has been done for me.
Yeah, so in
Uh,
that situation, keeping a Christian dude, if it's really working.
yeah, and I think that's exactly what Matt said. It was like, hey, if that's keeping you from doing harm to people, by all means, I don't want to change your mind. But I I sense that the other guy might have been exaggerating to make his point that if he was just so bad, and this is what Christianity did for him. But what he didn't realize was, if he's exaggerating how bad it is, how he just wants to just torture and kill people. I didn't honestly buy that was something that he thought all the time. But by doing that, he was making this case like, oh man, I went from here to here. But in reality, he was just really destroying his character, and um, showing why you would need the belief, not necessarily that the belief is true, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. So, yeah. So, do you want to try some street epistemology, or maybe I can try it on you or something? I don't know. Maybe let, let's let's work
Well,
through something here.
okay,
What were you gonna say?
yeah, we can definitely try street epistemology, like me on you, you on me, but it tends to not be as uh, informative or beneficial, because um, it's not like the real thing.
Okay, I
Because
see what you're saying.
if I don't talk to you about something that is actually significant to you in some way, or you talk to me about that's significant to me in some way, and we're just the goal is for us to learn street epistemology, it'd probably be better suited for me to talk about, like, the type of questions that we ask and why we ask them. If you constantly hear us asking certain questions.
Oh yeah, let's break apart a video. Remember, we said that over the emails that we could look at a video or
Okay.
something. You want to do that?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you have loaded up, but
I mean, I can load up anything.
you're a tech
Uh,
genius like that.
no, I'm not a tech genius. I'm terrible with tech. I really am. Um, Let's do let's do one that's not your videos, just so that you're not is there someone that you maybe don't watch that much, or have you not kept up with all of Anthony's recent videos? Or I'm thinking like let's do one that you haven't seen. I guess it doesn't really matter, but
yeah, you can maybe name it off and I can tell you whether I've seen it or not. I think I've seen Anthony's latest.
okay. Have you seen? Oh, that's a really short one. Have you seen Anthony's Purple Dragons Trust and Faith one from 5 years ago?
Purple Dragons Trust and Faith. No, if it's 5 years ago, I don't. It may be a video of Anthony that doesn't quite have all, or how do I say it? SE hasn't developed as far as it is now, so I might see some like, oh, what are you doing, Anthony? Come on.
Right. Perfect. Yeah, that'd be perfect then.
Oh, you know what? I've seen this one, but
oh boy,
it's been a long time.
Okay.
How big of a part is faith in your life?
Do you want like an actual percentage?
Yeah.
Can you? Okay, cool. And then just tell me when to stop.
Sure. What do you want?
That might be helpful if we were to pie chart how you got to your God belief.
Okay.
I think you were saying, let's pie chart it out. Like how much of it is personal experience? How much of it is it prayer coming true? Because I know you said prayer was a big part of it.
Okay.
How much of it is faith?
I would say that faith is instrumental in a lot of Christianity and in a lot of those different parts. And so I don't know if you could just like pie chart it out kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
Because my faith also isn't a blind faith, you know? Like it's based off of facts. It's based off of experiences. It's based off of stuff like that, you know? So like, even if
can you define faith for me? Because I know I've heard several definitions of it.
Okay. Faith is like you're on a mountainside. I'm gonna give you a little metaphor.
That seems to be the prevailing theme of our talk today.
There we go.
Okay. Maybe I'll just kind of do this, and I don't know if you can hear me over.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what do you think Anthony is doing when he's pie charting out the reasons he has to believe in a God?
He's trying to come to the thing that's that's like the biggest reason why he believes in what he believes.
Okay. So, what is the reason for going after the biggest reason or identifying it?
Is it to kind of cut past all of the stuff that's going to get someone to that reason, so that way you're not wasting time?
Yeah, basically. So you don't want to waste your time with reasons that someone has that isn't contributing to the confidence of their belief. So,
right, like look at the trees. It's like, okay, but
right. And well, it could be that could be a reason why they believe that, because they just look at the trees and they see design. And basically they can only tell you what's most important to them. And the only way that we can really, I guess, fact check that, if you will, is for us to go, well, if that wasn't true, would you be less confident? But other than that, it's just up to them. It's, we don't get to determine what's most impactful to them. So, and the whole reason why, another reason why we go for the thing that impacts their confidence the most is because it's really about how they concluded this belief. There could be so many different reasons for different people, and so you have to hone in on what their reason is. Because like you could be thrown in 20 different directions about why someone believes something, and if you're not asking the right questions, and you could be talking about a reason that has nothing to do with why they're confident. Like, for example, if you're talking to an apologist they're going to throw out arguments and, you know, all that stuff. But I can almost guarantee those arguments usually aren't what convinced them, and they will admit that. I've even asked some of them this, is like, okay, is this where you started believing when you heard this argument? They're like, well, no, I believed before that. It's like, okay, you know, so that's, you're trying to be efficient, and you're also trying to customize the talk to who you're talking to, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You're on a mountainside and you're on like a ledge and it's foggy down below, and you have to get down or else you're gonna freeze to death. And you could just hang on the ledge and then drop and then be like, hopefully there's something there, you know? And that's what I think most people would say is blind faith, you know? Like, you're like, I believe something's there. Or...
You mean like cutting your line and just dropping 1,000 meters? I'm
saying the ledge, you're hoping that there's a ledge underneath you that you're dropping onto the safety, you know?
Okay, I got you.
But then my faith is that I'm on this ledge and I can't see the other ledge. And I don't, like, I believe that it's there, but I believe that it's there because I hear someone saying, drop down to me. Like it's safe down here, there's a ledge you can drop to. And like that's what my faith is based off of. Like there's someone there, there's people that have gone through the same things I have, there's evidence in history and
is your faith
experiences.
Is your faith based off of feedback that you're getting from the God? Is that what you're saying?
I would say to be saved you have to have a real experience with God, if that's what you mean by feedback.
I only use the word feedback as because you were mentioning this an analogy about a voice telling you yes, it's safe to go.
I'm using that as you have information that it's there.
Okay, so like you're dangling from this rope, you're hoping that there's a precipice below that you can safely cut your rope and drop to.
That's a good word, precipice.
Right? Precipice.
Oops. Sorry.
Is the faith dropping one of your water bottles from the height to get a sense of the distance to the precipice below? Are you saying that?
I mean,
are you saying getting feedback to
I guess
probing?
I'm saying that there's a real person there. So it's not necessarily that you have these facts, but it's that you have a real person there, you know? See, the big difference between what you may view as Christianity and what I view as Christianity is that I believe in a real person, in a real God. I don't believe in a system or a set of beliefs or a ritualistic way to go about life, you know? Mm-hmm. And so all that's based on that there's actually someone there. There's like a person that I can come to for answers, you know?
Let's go back to the hanging from the rope, because I really love, I'm a visual kind of person, so like that's awesome. Now I'm dangling from this rope and there's foggy below, right?
Okay, so one of the things, there's two things that Anthony did right there. One was that he repeated back what he's hearing. So you're telling me, you know, in this analogy, you're dangling on a rope and you're getting feedback, you know, from a person saying it's there. So it's not just blind faith, but you can't see him, but you're getting some sort of evidence. And the most important thing, like I've seen, you know, SEers like repeat back literally everything they're hearing. Maybe not word for word, but you know, a summary of it, because it is so important for them to hear what that you're listening, and that is one, they're going to be more comfortable because they understand that you're actually listening and representing them the best you can. And even if you get it wrong, you're trying to understand, because what tends to happen in conversations conversations on topics like this is that someone might intentionally or unintentionally misrepresent someone. And if you want to make progress on someone evaluating how they got to their conclusion, you have to fully understand what they're saying. And this is a big time miss in debates all the time, is that you have someone, you know, make this argument and then someone else just not quite get it, or they're like intentionally misrepresenting it, and then it becomes unproductive, and you know, like it's very apparent to the viewer, like, okay, he was making this point, but now you're not really addressing his point and you're talking about something else. And that's why it can be so frustrating to listen to debates. In street epistemology, I mean, it's super, super important that you're actually hearing what they're saying, whether you agree with it or not, or anything like that. If you correctly convey what they're saying, then you can navigate exactly where they're at. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And
Okay.
I know that I think that there might be a precipice down there, because when I went up, I thought maybe I saw one in this area, but I don't know for sure. And I have to drop down to it, and I'm maxed out on my rope. And if I don't drop down to it, I'm going to freeze to death.
Okay.
But if I do drop down to it and survive the drop, I'll be okay. Like, I won't freeze.
Okay.
Okay. In that situation, one thing that I might do in that situation is, like I said, drop a water bottle and get a sense of the distance, right?
Okay.
I would try to get feedback, or might I use the word sufficient evidence, to tell me that it's safe to drop, that I can trust.
Okay.
I can trust my perception that if I dropped, I would survive it. When I hear people define faith, it doesn't usually I know that the precipice will be there for me. That I don't need evidence. I don't need feedback. I don't need to drop that water bottle to determine the distance to the precipice. Now that would be faith in my understanding of how Christians define it. And I don't want to force your definition. If that's different than what you're thinking,
I would say that you can have faith like that, but I'm also saying that you can have the evidence too. So I'm saying that, like, if people came to Christ through blind faith, that's great.
Okay.
But then eventually they'll be getting evidence, you know?
After the fact.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying if they just went completely blind faith, you know?
If you had evidence for the God belief, would you require faith?
Yes.
You still need faith, even though you might have evidence for the God?
Yeah. But your faith would include evidence. You know?
Faith includes evidence?
I'm saying that if you had that evidence already and you came to Christ, then you're...
So you can see he shifts his body language when Anthony brings up the question, if you had evidence, would you need faith? And I think he was comfortable enough to be honest and be like, yeah, no, you still need faith. And to me, following that analogy, it would be like, yeah, there's still mist. I still can't see where I'm going to go, but I think I still have enough evidence to know that it's there when I drop. And so when that conclusion comes up where he's like, no, I still need faith, and they talk about faith, being not so reliable, in other cases, this is where that cognitive dissonance comes up. This is where there's that problem in his head where he's like, oh, how do I resolve this? And you can see his body language shift. And so when that happens, you kind of need to be careful, because he can become a little more defensive. Really, he just needs to work out that himself. You don't really want to keep piling on the problems and seeing if, eventually it'll break. Really, you want him to digest these problems and figure it out for himself. If that makes sense.
So at this point, would you recommend like maybe trying to get to the end, or would you still just work through this part of it with them and like let him figure out for himself what direction he wants to go? Or do you try to end the conversation so that way they can digest it?
It really depends on the person. I can tell that this guy, his body language has changed, but he's still wanting to work this out with Anthony. And so when you get to this point where he realizes there might be an issue, it's important to be his partner, not someone pushing him off the ledge. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Faith would include that evidence. Like, you would have the faith and the evidence, you know?
Would I still need faith? What's your definition of faith? Let's get back to that.
Definition of faith?
Have you defined it?
I did, but my definition of faith, I'd say that's hard to do without actually doing like a real situation. But I'd say like you have to have faith to believe in that was Jesus that who appeared in front of you, you know?
What's your definition of faith though?
What's my definition of faith? I don't know if I can give you just like a set definition.
Could I propose one, and if you don't like it, you can disagree with it?
Yeah, let's do that. Let me hear it.
I like the definition of faith as believing in something without sufficient evidence.
Okay. See, I wouldn't think that's a bad definition, but then at the same time, I would say there is evidence. So I would say that your faith can include that, you know?
But if faith is believing in something without evidence,
Okay.
like, for example, and from my perspective, I don't have evidence for a God, but I can probably convince myself that one exists if I use faith to get there. Like, right? If I just go out on faith,
Okay.
I can believe it without any evidence, right?
Do you have to go soon or something?
No, I'm just, I don't know why I picked that up. Like I said, my definition is faith is belief without evidence. So if I had evidence for the God, if he came to me tonight in my closet,
Okay.
and there was no doubt in my mind that it was him, I would no longer need faith. But it sounds like you're saying, even after that event, and if I had evidence,
Okay.
I would still need faith after the fact to maintain the belief in him?
What I'm saying is that, say he came to you tonight, and you were like, okay, I know there's a God, you know? And then later in life, you're praying about something and you get an answer. But it wasn't, again, just him appearing to you and saying that answer. It could have been in that you read something in the Bible that somehow fits the exact situation that you've been praying about, you know? I'd say you have to have faith to realize, like, that was him speaking to me again, you know?
Okay.
So.
I think so. So, like, faith then for you might be
We're trying to define something that, like, set definition is kind of,
Yeah. But it was not like you were saying that in a situation that faith is something that you would use to get past the last remaining distance to concluding that something was real, maybe? Like,
Maybe.
I'm nearly certain that the God exists, but if I use faith, I can get the rest of the way?
I guess you could try to do it like that, but if you put it into that light, it sounds worse, you know? I would say that it is taking a situation where you see it and you have to believe it, you know? It'd be like, I saw Usain Bolt just do that, but I didn't believe it, you know? Or, that's probably a bad definition.
But yeah, if I saw Usain Bolt, break a world record, I would not need faith because I have evidence, right? I can look at a replay, I can talk to the officials that were there, I might have been there to actually witness it myself.
Okay.
I would have evidence.
That's a bad example.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what I'm saying is
let me ask you this, more generally.
There needs to be elements of faith in your belief. There will always be elements of faith in your belief.
You have to have it?
Because God wants you to trust him, you know? It'd be like, I'm going to get you a drink. Trust that I'll be back and give it to you. Like, let me have some money, trust that I'll be back, you know? And you have to have faith that I'm coming back.
You're equating trust with faith, it sounds like.
Okay.
Are they synonymous?
They're synonymous. I don't know if the two words would be synonymous, but I think that trust is included in faith sometimes, you know? Like, if you trust in God, you'll have faith that he will do what his character says he'll do and what he says he'll do. You know?
I'm sort of in the position that trust and faith are completely different.
Completely different?
Like in that situation of hanging from the cliff.
Okay.
You know, I think I was getting to it. If I drop the water bottle and I hear the echo, I can trust my senses to know that if I drop, I'm going to be okay.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that I'm using faith for that because I actually have evidence. I've seen something or I've heard something, you know, I felt something. Maybe seeing and hearing is maybe a little more reliable than a feeling.
Well, you heard a voice down there, so I don't know why you would drop the water bottle.
Well, my echo is what I'm saying.
I know, I'm saying that ledge is there, but there's a person on it who's saying drop down. And so there would be no need to drop the water bottle. But you could if you wanted to. I mean,
oh, okay. I got you. So when you're dangling from the precipice, you could opt to listen to the voice that you think is there and just use faith and think that. And the person down there is God, right? It's not, not one of your other climbers. Okay.
No, it's like, yeah.
I just want to be clear. Make sure our analogy is good here. Okay, so you can drop and listen to God and drop down there. Use faith that he's there.
Okay.
Because you think you hear God telling you it's okay, right?
Okay.
You can't see him.
Yeah, you can't see him. You can't see the mist. And you don't know if you're going to miss the ledge or something. Right. But he says, drop, like, trust me. This is where I think trust and faith are integral together. He says, trust in me and trust in that you're going to be safe because I said it. And so you have to have faith in that too, you know?
Mm-hmm. Do you use faith, which my definition was believing in something without evidence?
Okay.
And I don't know if you're quite on board with that definition or not, and that's fine. I don't want to pigeonhole into a definition.
Yeah.
Do you use faith on a day-to-day basis? Do you use it for anything else besides the God belief?
So use faith in something other than the God belief. Can you give me an example of something that you would say?
So, where do you think Anthony is going with this?
I imagine he's trying to show Adam that faith is kind of a term or a something that we really only use in that one particular thing in life, which is religion. That nobody would use faith, like you wouldn't use faith to know that your car is going to start or whatever the next day, you know, or you wouldn't use faith to know that, I don't know, the sun's going to rise tomorrow. That faith isn't something that we typically use, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, he's nailed down kind of, they're on the same page about what faith could potentially mean, whether it's trust or something, you know, something else.
Yeah.
And at this point, he's basically going, okay, so we have this idea of faith. Does this work? He's taking the methodology of using faith to conclude something is true. And then now he's basically going, okay, does this work on other things? Is there something other, something in your life that you use this? And once you come up with other examples, it's easier to identify if there's issues with that, because it's no longer this important belief that you don't want to necessarily lose. And it could be something as easy as starting my car, or, you know, something that's non-threatening. And so the point of taking it away from the God belief is usually for two reasons. So it's not, the stakes aren't so high. It's not like you're defensive about these examples. And two, it clarifies the inefficiency of, or the weak points of this methodology.
So I'm trying to think of a different, so let's say that it wasn't Adam and we're not talking about religion. We were just talking about vaccines. And the person says, you say, like, why are you an anti-vaxxer? And they say, because I've done a ton of research. You know, I've spent like 60 hours researching, because anti-vaxxers think that's a lot of research. And you say, like, what kind of research have you done? Well, I've listened to all these experts, and I've watched tons of YouTube videos, and I've done whatever. What would you do in that situation? Just, I mean, I know that this is getting away from our dissection of Adam, but
Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious because I think faith might be a little bit easier than something like that, because faith is something that's kind of well, it's honestly, it's not reliable. So it's easy to point out that it's not reliable.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not to someone who's religious, I guess, but whereas evidence, I can say, okay, but I can show you research papers that say vaccines are safe, and they're going to say, I mean, I know that you wouldn't use that in street epistemology. I'm just saying that a lot of time anti-vaxxers will say, I've done all this research, and then they say, well, I know that there's a lot of research on the other end of the spectrum, but who's to say my research is wrong and their research is right? You know what I mean? So both people are saying research, even though, one of them has to be wrong. Do you understand the question? I know I'm not posing it very well, but
yeah. So basically, if the method that they're using isn't really clear because it's basically relying on some authority that none of us have, we're not people that this is not our field,
right?
How would you go about exposing the flaws in that? Well, I mean, relying on authority is something that we all kind of have to do. So it's like, how do we do that? What's the most reliable ways that we could do that? And so probably a question I would ask her is, if you have, like, if you've done like 60 hours of research and someone else has done 60 hours of research, and you both came up with different conclusions, like, is that possible for someone else to do that, to do their research and come up with a different conclusion? Have you met anyone that does that? And I think usually just identifying that can happen, then you can from there do the outsider test. An outsider test is basically saying, if someone used that same methodology, just doing some research, however nebulous that is, and they came to a different conclusion than you, what does that say about that method? Just doing research, whatever research you do, does it matter what kind of, the quality of research? If one just simply does YouTube research or Google, and they can come up with two different conclusions, what does that say about that way to come to know something? Can we truly rely on doing our own research?
Right. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Cool. Yeah.
But
I don't know like what kind of circles you run with, but I'm like a electronic music producer, so I have a lot of friends in that world. And I have noticed ever since this coronavirus has happened, there has just been an unbelievable amount of conspiracy theories rising. I mean, it's just been crazy. And I think I've kind of been thinking about it today. I feel like there's maybe a few different reasons, but one of them is people are stuck at their homes with nothing better to do than look up conspiracy theories, So then one person posts about it, and then they give that to like maybe 100 people, and then 10 people out of those 100 people start to look at it because they have nothing better to do. And it's just this like, repeating effect of, So anyways,
another way to look at it would be, if you did your research and someone else did their research and they came up with the opposite conclusion, how could we determine which of you is more correct? Like, who do we go to? What do we do when someone has said that they have done their research and gotten to a different conclusion? How could we resolve that? And so, depending on their answer, if they don't simply know how they could, figure out how you could differentiate between the two, that's a good point to stop and think about. And if they have examples like, this is how you figure it out. So like, then basically we could just trust the studies. Well, it doesn't matter what you've researched, doesn't matter what I've researched. Whoever has the most studies that, conclusive studies, whatever, then you would probably ask if those studies were showed that you were wrong, would that be something that would impact your confidence? And hopefully, since you're going down all this road, they would say, yeah, it would. If not, then, that doesn't, obviously none of that matters. It's like,
Right.
well, then what,
Yeah, I thought it was
reason?
interesting on the video that I watched of yours today with the girl that was an anti-vaxxer. She was so committed to this, and you brought out the whole artillery and was like, what if you basically asked her, what if you were proved, what if you knew that you were wrong, would you still not believe? And she was like, no, that not even that would change my mind. It was pretty incredible. So on Monday, I had someone, I believe it was Monday, I had someone on my podcast where I kind of opened it up to people to come in if they wanted to. And someone came in and was asking us about this Q. Have you heard of this QAnon or Q phenomenon?
No.
It's a conspiracy theory that basically there's people that believe that Trump is like going on to 8chan. Do you know what 8chan is?
No, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's like, dude, I listen to podcasts and books all day at work, so I know all about all sorts of weird stuff. So 8chan is just like this like Reddit that's super underground where there's like a lot of anti-Semitism and conspiracy theorists and trolls and all sorts of weird stuff. And so people are convinced that Trump goes on to 8chan and leaves like these really super cryptic codes on there about future events before they happen. And they basically said that the Kafif thing that Trump did like 3 years ago was a warning about the coronavirus. And so there's like all this like dissection, like corona, Kafif, like they take and they dissect both the words and then try to figure out how they like link up together using like 20 different weird lines. And then
it's funny how they came up with this after the fact instead of before.
I know, right? That's, yeah, I know.
But to clarify, when you're watching that video that I did with a girl with vaccine, about vaccines, most of what I was doing was trying to employ a way to falsify what she was saying. And so when I say, if I didn't necessarily say, if you knew you were wrong, would you still believe it? Because
I was being overly dramatic, but
no, it was if you were actually wrong, but you still believed you were, or you still believed it, how could you figure it out? And that's just a way to see if they can figure out a way to falsify what they're saying. And usually that's where it goes when someone is so confident and dug into their position. Getting them from 100% to like 95% is usually, I think, some like a goal I would go after, because if they can't figure out if they were wrong, they have nothing to point to that would conclude that they're wrong. The message I leave with them is basically, how do you know you're not wrong right now? And you just simply don't know how to identify it. You don't have the tools to know what wrong looks like.
Yeah.
And I just leave it at that. It's not,
Yeah, it's interesting though. I have I have quite a bit of friends that are like flat earthers, or I shouldn't say friends, just like acquaintances that are like flat earthers. And it seems like conspiracy theories almost have stronger talons than religion.
Oh yeah? What do you mean, stronger talons?
It's harder for people to let go of them. And I think the reason, I could totally be wrong about this. I mean, I don't know. But it just seems, maybe it's just as strong. I shouldn't say stronger, but maybe just as strong. I mean, like 9/11, for example, being an inside job, that's one of those things that there's just not enough clear information to the average person to know whether or not it's possible. They're not smart enough in physics. They don't know enough about demolition. Maybe they don't know enough about, I don't know, the stuff that went on that day. There's a lot of misinformation on the internet about the stuff that went on that day. And so there's so little clarification to the average person about all these different things. And so someone could spend a lot of time investigating 9/11 and come out with their head spinning because there's so much information on the internet about it being a conspiracy, not being a conspiracy. The government doesn't want to release all the information because they don't need to. And I mean, it's almost like at the end of the day, people, even the most rational people, want to stay agnostic on it because it's so convoluted, you know?
Yeah, and I would add it wouldn't matter what the government did, whether they released proof or anything like that. You'd still have conspiracy theorists because I don't think that type of stuff matters to someone who's really committed to a conspiracy. And I mean, there's a ton of people that know more about the conspiracy mindset than I do, but from my understanding, someone who has bought into a conspiracy will likely buy into other conspiracies. And so it's more about a mindset and having an appetite for, like, I know something you don't know, sort of thing, than it is about someone just being tricked by YouTube. Because I mean, information's out there. If you are someone who wants to believe something that is like kind of not every
Cutting edge.
It makes you feel like you know something that someone else doesn't know.
Totally.
You're gonna find it.
Yeah, I have a really close friend who I've known for a really long time, and he's all in on it. You know, he believes everything is a lie. The earth is flat. The government's fucking seeding the clouds. Space is fake, yet there's aliens, which I don't understand. And he thinks that there's like this top 13 families that are all working together to try to, like, I mean, the problem is that the universe, or the world, the planet, is not that structured. You know what I'm saying? Like, there is not enough cohesive activity for that to work. And anyways, sorry, this is kind of getting outside of our wheelhouse for the day, but
well, what I'd ask is, does this person act on these beliefs? Does his, like, beliefs in these conspiracies actually, like, is he wearing a tinfoil? Is he locking his door and has a loaded weapon underneath his bed? Does this stuff keep him up at night, or is it just something like, ooh, I know this?
I think it's much more harmful than that.
Oh, really?
I think, yeah, absolutely. Because the average person doesn't have the tools to discern good information from bad information. And the average person doesn't understand how to logic in a way that's, like, actually, I guess, like, in a philosophical, logical way. You know what I'm saying? Like, build good arguments, try to do deductive reasoning, things like that. And so when people get into these mindsets, they want to share it with people, and they invite more people into their club. And then it creates this, for example, one of the biggest, in my opinion, harms is the anti-vax community. And the anti-vax community is just a faction, like you were just saying, of every other conspiracy. And the problem with the anti-vax community is that vaccines rely upon a certain percentage of people using them.
Yeah, herd mentality, or herd immunity.
Yeah, herd immunity. So if you don't have that percentage, then we can have polio come back, or measles, or these harmful diseases, not to mention the flu, which kills tons of people every year. And so I actually do think it's dangerous.
Yeah, the reason why I asked that question was not to say, oh well, it's not that dangerous because he's not, it doesn't have a tinfoil and he's not carrying a shotgun around. My point was, if he's not doing those things, he probably doesn't sincerely believe it.
I think he does. I mean, I think. Yeah. I know that you don't know who I'm talking about, so it's hard for you to know. But I think he does, and he has actually driven himself to the point of suicide because of this information in the past.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the problem that I see with it is, I mean, I when he's gone to that point, I've actually called and tried to talk him off the cliff, literally speaking, and tried to explain to him that this is dangerous because you believe that his perception of it is he believes that everybody is being lied to and everybody's too stupid to see it. You know what I'm saying? And it's like this thing where he literally thinks that everybody's not on his level, and so he doesn't see the point in continuing. And then the added onness of this is that he believes in like things like reincarnation and energy and all that shit. So what's the point? You know what I mean? And so it's kind of, I think that, I mean, most people probably aren't into it quite as much as he is, and that's a good thing. But the problem that I see with it is that when you're getting people to jump into this, like right now with the coronavirus is a prime example. Okay. There's so much information about the coronavirus being a conspiracy right now. And this is making people think the government is doing it in order to like lock them down in their house so they can pull off this big New World Order plan. And people are going to start loading guns and shooting, you know, and that will happen. I mean, this has happened with Pizzagate, which, are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
So there was the guy that shot into the pizza parlor. There was the guy that shot up the mosque in New Zealand. I mean, his whole thing was like, his manifesto was like largely a troll manifesto, but it was littered with YouTubers and conspiracy theorists. And so I do think that there is a big harm in this stuff, because it makes you know, because you're saying people believe one conspiracy and then they might move on to other conspiracies. Well, if the other conspiracies that they're moving on to is things like you know, the white genocide and how people are like trying to breed out whiteness and the white people are superior, that's a real conspiracy too, that's all over the internet, you know, and that's super dangerous. So
yeah. And so I think learning how to use street epistemology would be definitely beneficial, because there's going after certain conclusions and beliefs that people have and debunking them and all that stuff. It may only help for that one belief, but if you expose the problems with using unreliable methods and how to get to certain conclusions, even if that conclusion is true, it helps people not fall into other things. Like, you know, I'm sure there's plenty of people that, you know, believe in the theory of evolution for bad reasons.
Right.
And so you can use street epistemology to expose why those are bad reasons. Right. Even though, you know, it's pretty clear that evolution is true.
Right. That's a really good point too.
Yeah, like I remember talking with someone and they're like, wait, why are we trying to convince people that evolution isn't true? It is true. I'm like, I'm not convincing him it's not true. I'm not exposing that it's not true. I'm exposing that how he concluded that it's true is actually not a good way to get there. And you need to find a better way.
For example, a good example would be like the atheist that hates religion because God is bad. you know,
Yeah.
or something like that. It's like someone that came to the conclusion that, like they're like, I'm an atheist because, you know, the people in my church were mean to me. And it's like, wait, that's not a good reason to be an
Right.
atheist.
Like,
You know?
I believe in evolution because my teacher taught that to me when I was young.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Or it makes the most sense. I mean, that's not really an answer, but that's an answer a
Yeah.
lot of people give because they don't actually understand it. So
Yeah. So once you start working on the underlining issue of how they're reaching people, how people are reaching certain conclusions, and helping them realize what's works better and what leads to truth more often than not, and what doesn't rather lead to truth, then they can take all of those tools and apply it everywhere. And so they're not simply just going from one conspiracy to the next conspiracy. They're going,
right.
Oh, you know, that doesn't make sense. I shouldn't do that. Oh, well, other people are doing that over here, so that I'm not going to fall for that. And so that's how you have a population of people who can see a bunch of BS all the time and go, nope, that's BS. Oh, that's probably somewhat true, but not. I had to look into it, and you know, and just having people that can withstand a ton of information.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just realized that I've taken a bunch of your time up, and I know we haven't finished dissecting this video, but maybe we should do a part 2.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Yeah, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I appreciate your time a lot. You know, it's cool. I'm glad that we got to meet each other because I feel like, you know, it's cool to meet I hope to get the street epistemology thing going on my end so that we just have more people on the SE army, you know.
Yeah.
I bought a GoPro and I bought like a little whiteboard, and so I'm well on my way. But
yeah, that's cool, man. I think that once you get a taste of it, you're going to be kind of addicted, because the cool thing about street epistemology is that you can end the conversation. You can kind of control the pace. And so when you're new, you can just take 2 steps and then end the conversation, or you can take 4 steps and then end the conversation, or you can, you know, you can learn how to ask more and more questions and ask questions in different ways and put your own spin on it. And then you're going to get to the point where you can go as long as the person is willing to go. And then you kind of have to learn how to respect people's time and space and give them time to digest all the things that you're throwing at them. But at first it's like there's no pressure. You think you have to live up to some of the things you see online, and you're like, man, I don't know how I can ask all these questions and be ready and make it flow. It's like you don't. You just have to. You can ask 3 questions, 4 questions, and say, yeah, thanks for your time. And it can be as simple as that.
Yeah, I was thinking I might try to do some on like this too with conspiracy theorists that I come across on the internet. You know, just like random people I don't know, because doing it to people I know might be a little bit more difficult, especially people that I've pushed back on conspiracy with in the past. But if I could find like YouTubers that are flat earthers or something, and then do SE on them and try to just like work through it with them, and not necessarily like try to change their mind or anything, but just so the people watching can see, you know, like the reasoning behind it and the flaw in the reasoning behind it.
Right.
And maybe they won't continue to change so many minds, because that, I mean, it does really concern me. Like, I know conspiracies aren't anything new, but it does really concern me, because if we can get everybody spending that time educating themselves on viruses and on physics, like, who knows, maybe those people are going to be the next Einsteins, but instead they're like wasting their time, you know. And I mean, because they're not stupid. There's smart people that believe stupid things, you know. So
yeah.
And that's how my friend is. But
what tends to happen is, if someone is super smart, but they made a mistake somewhere along the way, it is so hard to get them to come back and dig themselves out of a hole that they put themselves in. Because in a lot of the ways, intelligence hinders yourself from realizing you're wrong, because there's so many ways that you could come come at it and rationalize and all that stuff, but not realize the underlining assumption you've already made, and you're unwilling to go there. You're unwilling to question it, and that's what SCers are for. Is to just start from the beginning and see where they're at and see exactly why they made a left turn instead of right. On each step of the way.
Have you ever read, this is almost irrelevant, but I think it might have to do with this, but have you ever read Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman?
No, honestly, I'm not much of a reader. I do like to watch a lot of videos or listen to podcasts, but actually reading, I don't know. I don't like to do it. I'll do it, but I don't have to.
Yeah. Well, he's got an Audible, so maybe check it out. But I was just thinking you might enjoy it. But
okay, cool.
So cool, man. Well, hey, thanks so much for your time. And this will probably go up pretty quick. It's definitely going to go up on YouTube right away, but I'm going to have to edit because we actually had a problem in the middle of our conversation where it stopped live streaming and then I had to start it over again. So I'm going to have to splice those two together and then upload it. So
okay, no worries.
All right, man. Hey, take it easy. It was good talking to you.
You as well.
Thanks.
Later.
Bye.